Welcome to Season 2 of the Excel podcast. Join your host Kevin Selwood as he talks to a variety of people with useful and interesting things to say about all things to do with instructing and driver training. Throughout the series there will be a mixture of local personalities from the driver training industry in Exeter and Torbay areas, as well as nationally acclaimed trainers. Episodes include informative discussions regarding all aspects of running your business, as well as opportunities to find out a bit more about each interviewee. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello everybody and welcome to this latest episode of the Excel podcast, and I am delighted and feel quite privileged to have one of the legends of instructor training with me today. I did say legend and not legend.
Worth apply.
Yeah. For those of you who recognise that voice, it is the wonderful Mr. Bob Morton. Bob, thank you ever so much.
I just realised I was waving at the video camera and it's an audio podcast.
Yeah, yes. Well, I think you and I, you and I both have faces for radio, I think.
Absolutely. As only my mother thinks otherwise.
I think we've got this off in the vein that it's probably going to carry on. And hopefully at some point there'll be some nuggets of, I'm sure I know there will be some nuggets of gold coming out of this. Those of you who've listened to previous episodes know that this season we're sort of delving into mainly looking at how to pass and improve on standard checks. And is that right? Standard checks or standards? No, well, the English has lost me there. And part threes. Yeah, great. And delving into that in a little bit of detail. Before we do that, however, as I was saying to Bob before we came on air, there are some experienced instructors who have never actually really not so much come across you, but I didn't realise quite what wealth of information you have out there already. But also there's new people coming through. If they weren't with LDC at any point, probably don't actually know you. I'll just say before we delve into that, my first meeting with Bob was in the palatial surroundings of the Masonic Hall in Pontefract in April 2007.
Oh my God.
For my LDC induction program. So yes, we go back quite a long time.
Indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, Bob, thank you so much for doing this. Just give us a little bit of a potted history of how you've got to where you are today.
Well, I started life as a mechanic. Then for some reason became a bus driver, wagon driver, train driver, and then a driving instructor because the driving trains broke a joint in my neck, cervical spondylosis. So basically arthritis in the neck, and I was paralysed down one side. Horrific. And couldn't get a job, so I had to look for something that was self-employed. And like a lot of people, I looked at driving instruction and thought, well, I can drive, I'm a good driver, and I can communicate. That looks like an easy job to me. So off we went. And then fairly quickly discovered it wasn't quite as easy as I thought. So trained with a local driving school, qualified in 1989. 1989. That's probably before most of your audience was born. Joined LDC because I'd started training. Excuse me. I'd started training driving instructors because I was interested in it, and I wanted to have a more formalised approach to that. So I approached LDC, who were, as it happens, were in the same building as a friend of mine who ran a music shop. So I just got chatting with Paul McCardle, who's the head honcho there.
Yep.
And joined them with a view to becoming an instructor trainer. So became trainer, team leader, Northern regional manager, then moved to Pontefract and went to just about every job in the company really, and finished my time up there 30 years later as director of training, responsible for writing and delivering training courses, the induction training for everybody, developing the coaching aspect of what we were doing. Paul had a big interest in coaching back in 2008 and 9, and then the Hermes report was published in 2010. Left LDC, so it's sort of not institutionalised, well I suppose a bit, so hidden away in a dark cupboard in the corner of LDC, so wasn't really out in the wild, as it were. COVID came. I steered the company, well, not just me, but helped to steer the company through that, being the face of positivity in a time when there wasn't much positivity to be found. And got to the end of that and thought, you know what, I'm knackered now. It's time for me to retire. Then discovered I didn't want to retire. I can't. I'm not built to sit around and do nothing. So started my online membership stuff, where people can pay a monthly fee and get access to all of my online stuff. Stay as long or as short as they want. And that's what I do now. And I do online masterclasses, and I attend all the instructor shows, that kind of stuff. So 30 odd years in the business, lots of experience in coaching and training driving instructors and training driving instructor trainers. But what people often say, oh, we're expert. No, I'm just a job and driving instructor. I've just got a bit of experience, that's all. Specialise in part 3 and standards check, really, and unlocking the secrets to that, because it's not as hard as people think it is. Will that do? Does that cover it?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. I'll latch on in a minute to it's not as hard as people think it is, because I totally agree with you on that. I'll just put a little my pennyworth in here. I think you're doing yourself a big disservice, because to me, you always tried very hard to make things as simple as possible. Any time I spoke to you at LDC or in a meeting, it was, and I loved my time at LDC. I really did. Was grateful when Pat Firth, who was the training manager, asked me if I'd want to do the audit training. And if you hadn't have sent me a fantastic trainee 9 years ago, I think I probably would still be there, which would mean that you wouldn't have had the fantastic trainer you've got down here now in Ella Burnett,
Yes,
who is doing a quite superb job, and
she's good, isn't she?
And have to keep telling her that because she's full of self-doubt. But that's
we
another
all
story.
are at some level or another, even the most confident of us have these little dark corners where we have nagging doubts and worries. All of us.
Yeah.
Just the human condition, isn't it?
That's right, yes. Yeah, I think if you talk to any sort of international sports star, they'll tell you exactly the same, that the nerves are there.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I did sort of pre-prepare you very briefly on one question that I was going to ask you, and it's sort of a very quick answer to what do I need to do to pass my standards check or part 3 test? Because in effect, the marking is exactly the same.
Yeah, it is. You need to deliver the lesson that's needed for that pupil on that day at that time. That's it.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
I think Lou Walsh puts it almost as succinctly, if I can remember, is was it appropriate? Was it safe? Did it work? Yeah. So
it's the amount of times I sat in the back of a car last week doing some training, and very good instructor, very good, lovely, smashing fella. You can see why he's busy, and we just kept doing the same stuff, and we kept getting the same result. And I said to him, so talk me through your strategy there. He said, I was just trying to find lots of different ways of explaining it to her. I said, was she understanding? No. So what do you think the problem is there? Well, she's a bit of a slow learner. Really? Okay. So you think it's her fault? Okay. How many points do you think you'd score on a standards check? He said, well, I think because I did all the right things, I'll score really highly. I said, well, I've got you down as 23 points, mate, and I've been kind.
Yeah.
You didn't do what was required.
Yeah.
What you were doing wasn't working. Therefore, you have committed the cardinal sin of not adapting the lesson when appropriate.
Yes.
To work towards the pupil's learning goals and needs. And he said, well, we talked about that at the start. That's not. It's an evolving thing. Needs.
Yes.
You've identified a new need. You've identified it as the professional driver trainer. It's your job now to convince them that that's something that should now be a goal. Yes. And you need to make a good case there by giving sufficient feedback to help that pupil understand any safety critical incidents and say, bit crap that, mate, innit? That won't do. We need to do it a different way. Would you agree? And if they say no, you need to override them and say, well, I'm afraid this is what we're going to do. So it is that simple. And the amount of, I'll try not to run off at a tangent here, the amount of trainers that I talk to that haven't read the national standard for driver and rider training, which I think is atrocious. Yes. How can you work in the game where you don't know what the standard is?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Lovely.
Sorry, I'll rein myself in. I'll rein myself in.
One thing I will just mention now, before I forget, I've made a note of it, that I'll put a link to your website.
Oh, cool.
On-
Client-centeredlearning.co.uk.
Yeah, that'll go in the notes as well. So,
Thank you very much.
people
Come and pay me a visit. Have a look around.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've looked at it, and yeah, there's so much there, and also you've got stuff on YouTube.
Yeah. Just type Bob Morton into YouTube. You'll get the guy who starred in RoboCop and me. And I'm actually number one above him now. That's changed.
Yeah, from what you were just saying, I've just come back from sitting in on a PDI. Ever such a enthusiastic lady, doing a really good job. But I'm just trying to get to the crux of it. That let's find out some stuff from the learner. That you want to do this. The first 3 sessions she did, she was just too ambitious. We went round the circuit in the local industrial estate. Yeah, we've done that. So then we shot off somewhere else. And when we got there, I said to her, "Why have we come up here?" Well, we've done the circuit round there. Well, how good has the learner? How much has the learner improved by? Is she now consistent with what your initial focus was? Well, not really, no. So, well, okay. And we did a session today where I deliberately only sat in for an hour. And I think she was quite surprised about the fact that we just stayed in the same area, because there were things to do there. And it was a case of find out from the learner. One classic example was we're pulling up to stop and said, right, put the clutch down. I said, could you have asked her what she needed to do with the clutch to prevent us stalling? I said, you don't have to be cryptic about this. Don't hide the...
Absolutely. Keep it simple.
And then you'll either get the right answer, the wrong answer, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's so much you get from that. But,
and I think you're right. It is about, and if you don't get what you were expecting, okay, have a little think here.
Yes.
And I think one of the key things is to have some specific outcomes. And I speak to so many, and I'm sure you have exactly the same, Kevin. You speak to PDIs especially. You say, what are you going to do on your Part 3 roundabouts?
Oh, yeah.
Why roundabouts? I like teaching those. Is that what your pupil needs?
Yeah.
Well, sort of. Okay. Tell me about sort of. And tell me the difference between that sort of what you need and exactly what you need. Tell me the difference between the two. And it's, you can't default to something that you fancy doing.
Yeah.
And they're too broad, as you've just said earlier. It's too broad.
Yes.
Roundabouts is a huge subject. We need to think about developing skills, not topics.
Yes.
And it's, this should be a test that's about developing skills. And it's worth looking, isn't it, at the difference between the new test and the old test. The old test, they tested your knowledge by seeing if you could deliver an 8-minute lecture, one-way lecture. Maybe add some questions in. That was the icing on the cake, where you could just deliver a one-way lecture. Then they tested whether you could get the pupil to do it with you talking them through it, then with you prompting them through it, and then with you letting them have a go on their own. So that's in their terms. Then learning took place. Yes. Then the second half an hour, it was your job to spot the mistake that the examiner had deliberately made. Give him the information that says why that's wrong. You shouldn't be doing it that way. You should be doing it this way. So that was your remedial, or your analysis rather. And then you would talk them through it, and then prompt them, and then let them have a go on their own. And in that way, learning was set to take place. But of course, coaching or client-centered learning now means that we have to get the learning out of the learner, not put it in. Yes. So it's not enough anymore. So we need to involve the learner. All the solutions need to be involving, or better still, directed by the learner. So it's a totally different game. Yes. And you can't apply the things that we did before to this new test, because we need to still spot the problem. We need to identify the problem. We need to have some remedies at hand, and we need to know why it's a problem, but we then need to engage. So the first, I love the new test because the plan is already set. The examiner jumps in. This is what we're working on. Yeah. This is the support we've agreed. This is what we're doing. After X number of times, we're going to have a review. So you've set a plan, execute the plan. The first box really that the examiner's looking at is, was the trainer aware of the surroundings and the pupil's actions? Are you aware of what's happened, what's just about to happen, and what might happen, and what happened a little bit further back? Are you then drawing it to their attention? Was any intervention timely and appropriate? And then was sufficient feedback given to help the pupil understand any safety critical incident? But the addition here now is you must have the pupil realise that, oh, that is a problem. I think that should be our next goal, which then leads you to adapting the lesson, which leads to new goals and needs, which leads to a new plan, and so it goes. And we're not getting into that cycle. That's the problem that I see, and I'm sure you see the same over and over. That cycle gets broken somewhere. And we keep doing what we were doing, and surprisingly, we get what we just got. So you've got to do something different. If you're not getting what you want, you've got to do something different to get what it is that you wanted. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Halfway through that, I was thinking of, I remember my audit training. It was in the old system, and it was very much, we had these phrases that we'd come out with. This is what you did here, this is why, and as you say, this is what to do to sort it out, which was the accepted way of doing things.
So it's still kind of the same, except you've got to get the light bulb to go on above the learner's head, not yours.
I did a session on bay parking with a learner last week, and one of our PDIs sat in, and I said to him, make a list of the number of things I tell this learner. And in an hour, there was one. So where did all the information come from?
Absolutely.
From the learner. And it's about asking the right questions as well.
I get a little exercise that I get people, and if anybody's listening to this thinking, sounds a bit like hippie, I got a message from Mike Harkin again the other day, and I went down to pick that award up. He went, "You've done fairly well with that hippie trippy shit that you're spewing out." I love Mike. The previous post on Facebook was, "I see you still befuddling people with that hippie trippy shit, Bob." Brilliant.
Reminds me of my last trip from New Zealand in January, where three of us went into a pub, and the two friends ordered the newer stuff, and I ordered a pale ale, and the guy behind the bar said, "Oh, at least you're having a man's drink, not this fruity shit."
Brilliant.
And also, going back to this sort of mantra that was trundled out for things, risk assessment and risk management. When we started this new standards check and part 3, oh my golly, and I think the examiners got fed up with hearing the same thing about the dual controls. Absolutely. And this, that and the other. And I know our senior examiner now said to me, I don't really want to hear that. No. I don't need to.
They want to see us managing the risk in a physical way. Actually, based on what has just happened or what might be about to happen, what are we going to do next? And that's how they see us managing risk. It's not about a one-way lecture at the start. And they hate stuff like 6-point checks and stuff because it's not resonating with the pupil. Now, because a lot of it, traditional instruction, I always say this to people, I said it on the masterclass I run the other night. If you're in the game of giving people a load of stuff to remember, you're not doing it right.
Yes.
Because they get on test and they forget. You want them to develop strategies of their own that make sense to them, that resonate, that fit in with what their map of the world inside their head, and that makes sense to them, so that it then becomes hardwired as part of their behaviour going forward.
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about. The coaching thing. It's not, Mike's really kidding when he says hippie trippy stuff, but it's about changing behaviour through changing the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions that underpin our behaviour.
Yeah.
As you well know.
Yeah, and I did the Try Coaching BTEC 4 some years ago, and that's very much focused in that direction.
I was talking to somebody again this morning, and he was slagging Graham off. I said, Graham gets a lot of hate on Facebook. I said, so can I just stop you there? I don't know why you're choosing to spout that to me. How do you know that Graham might be my cousin?
He's not an Arsenal supporter, this guy, though, is he? That'd be a reason to slag him off.
It's possible. I mean, that must be hurting Graham at the minute. Arsenal looking like they're going to win the title. But they get a lot of hate on Facebook, and I don't understand why. They have done more for CPD than the rest of the industry put together. So they're to be admired and applauded for that. Now, okay, if you don't like the guy, you don't happen to like him. But if you don't, that's fine. But this vitriol that gets spewed in his direction is just unbelievable.
Yeah. No, I've done 2 or 3 courses with him, and yeah, he resonates with me. Yeah.
So I think they've done a great job. It's
Yeah.
they've look how many of the senior trainers or the people
Yes.
who people regard as the big players in the game
Yes.
have come through their ranks. So
Yes.
they've done a pretty good job, to be fair.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Right. Let's just. We've sort of looked at, because I looked at one of your being better with Bob.
All right.
I think it was, and the list of questions on there, and I thought, oh my God, if he listens to the first podcast I did with Ella and the others, he's going to think we nicked all the questions from him.
It's the same, and I don't think it matters if you're lifting questions from elsewhere on the internet. They're the questions that are plaguing people.
But we weren't. Anyway, I'll stress that. We came, in fact, Phil Cowley, one of the others, came up with most of them. But all these things about how do you know when to change the lesson, and how do you know what route to choose? And Phil came up with a great thing about, he says, I don't choose a route, we talk about areas.
Absolutely.
Somebody
A
just
piece of the world where you can isolate the skill that you're developing.
Yeah. Sorry,
But ADIs and PDIs think about their route for their Part 3 and their standards check as leaving the test centre and arriving back in 40 minutes' time. That's
Yes.
a big mistake.
Yes.
Mistake.
Yeah.
Where can I work on the thing that I want to work on in isolation? So if I'm doing roundabouts, I don't want pedestrian crossings and traffic lights.
Yeah.
So I've developed a little, I call it the chunking methodology. We put a plan together, we think about what we're going to work on, we put together an area we can practice just that if we can. So you've got to compromise sometimes. We execute the plan, and after, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, we do a review. Is the plan working? If the answer is yes, that's a big pat on the back for everybody involved, and the lesson plan has to change now. Because you can't do the same stuff again because you get what you just got.
Yes.
So if it's a yes answer, then we need either more of a challenge or less help. Or it could be that we're signing the thing off because, well, we're done with that now. But either way, after that review, the lesson must change. If it doesn't, that's a dereliction of our duty. But the answer might be no. Is the plan working? No. So we need more help, or less of a challenge. Or we might be putting it away because it's too much for us to do. But either way, the next burst of activity will be different. So you always change the lesson. So a question I get asked often, hands go up at these shows, and what happens if I don't need to change the lesson? You haven't done your job. It's your fault. That's your fault.
Yeah,
But what if the people's doing really well? Then that was not the right lesson for them. Then was it?
Yes.
It's too easy for them.
Yeah.
So, but then I also say you've got to think. Then, is there anything I need to add in? Has something happened while we've been working on this? Like, have we shaved a parked car? Have we knocked a cyclist over? Are we adding that to the plan, or are we replacing the plan with that?
Yeah.
And then you undertake another burst of activity. So every 5 to 8 minutes, your lesson should change. And if it doesn't, you're just not doing your job.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah. You've got I think you must have done this little flow chart of what you've done there, because years ago Ella showed it to me and I nicked it off her.
That the one in yellow and green and red. Yeah, I did that a little bit too.
Yeah.
Similar. Is it working? Yes or no?
Yes, yeah, that's right. I've got a photo of that somewhere that I nicked from her when I was sitting in the back of her car once. But yeah, it's amazing.
Something that I designed for new trainee trainers. So this is the pattern you've got to show them. So if you're going to role play, I think about where you're at it. I mean, I love the fact that there's no role play now. Although I haven't said that, I'm going to bring it back in. But I still won't do role play for my audit. I'll be in the driver's seat, but I'll just say I'm going to drive as me now, and I'm going to make some mistakes deliberately, and your job is to spot them. And when you spot them, you let me know. It's okay. And what I like about that is then once they've spotted it, I say, okay, so let's look at a range of different learners. What are you going to say if I say to you as the learner, yes, all right, the way I did it, nothing wrong with that. I watch my dad drive. He's a good driver, my dad. That's what he does. Been driving 30 years and he's never had an accident. Have you had an accident? What would you say to that learner? Once we've dealt with that, I can then say, what would you say if I was saying, oh, yeah, all right then. Do I sound convinced? What's the conversation going to be like then? And I can go through a myriad of different learners without being in role. And it just frees me up. I can do all manner of things. And what would you say if the learner said this? And what would you say if this was the result? What would you say if the learner just wasn't getting it? I don't have to drop into role. And because what it does mean now is if you're in role, as a certain learner, sometimes, as you well know, opportunities present themselves to do something because somebody's done something daft. You think, oh, but you can't necessarily always follow that because, well, I'm enrolled as this learner. I'm not enrolled now. I can do what the hell I want.
Yes, yeah. Oh, now look, you have absolutely cheered me up on this, the way that the audit assessment is going, because I've got a bit depressed by the people who say, "Oh no, we can only do role play." And so, yes, you've opened my eyes there, because mine.
Well, I just generally do a circular route, and I'll say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this fault 3 times. If you don't spot it, we're going to pull over, and I'm going to tell you what it was.
Yeah.
So if I pull it over and I say, right, it was this, I'm going to do the same route, and we're going to see if you spot it this time. They spot it, and I say, you spotted it that time, yeah. What was different about what you did this time? Well, I was watching you more. Okay, what do we learn from this? So how much of the time can you watch me? Let's talk about risk management here.
Yes, yeah.
How much of the time? So they're thinking about it. They're coming up with the solutions. Right, okay, so you've spotted the fault. You've now got to convince me that it's something I need to fix.
Yeah.
And I'll point to the form. Was sufficient feedback given? And was sufficient feedback given to help me understand it was safety critical and that I need to fix it? And once I've agreed to fix it, where does that appear on the form, do you think? I give them the form. Well, it's up here. Was the lesson plan adapted? Does that impact on these top 2 boxes? New goals and needs and a new plan? Oh, yeah, it does. Does that impact on teaching and learning strategies? Oh, it does. Show me on the form where it appears there. So I'm getting them to understand the form, which, by the way, obviously, as you well know, means that I'm helping them to understand the national standard for driver and rider training. It's helping them to see how easy it is.
Yeah.
And how that if you don't get that basic see it, say it, suss it, sort it right, the rest of the form just drops off.
Yeah.
And they're all 1s or 0s.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you well know.
Yes. I'm just sitting here nodding, although nobody can see that because I'm just in total agreement.
I'm gesturing all over the place. Good job. Good job. Nobody can see that. I look like a lunatic.
That's gold dust, a lot of that. Let me just ask you about the proposal to raise the pass mark for standards check, not part 3, from 31 to 33, and this has had some ridiculous, well, to my mind anyway, some ridiculous reaction from some people.
Well, it's when I was down picking that award up, John Sheridan was there picking up a lifetime achievement, and he said, "Oh, I was down here, and I've just come here." I said, "Well, can I just ask, John? You coming out of retirement, is that linked to this 33-point business, and what's that all about?" And he gave me a wry look because he knew I was going to yank his leg. It's about raising standards. But the reality is, if you're a PDI or an ADI and you're looking at that thinking, oh, God, they made it harder. No, they haven't. And I'll tell you why. Because if they're looking at you, seeing what you're doing and thinking, are you aware of the surroundings of the pupil's actions? Tick. Was any intervention timely and appropriate? Tick. Was sufficient feedback given? Tick. And was the lesson plan adapted? Tick. If you've done well in those boxes, no matter what happens elsewhere, the examiner will find 31 or 33 points to get you over the line. It's that simple. They want the basics done very well. And, I've seen it happen. I've sat in on exams. I've seen it happen where I thought, oh, a bit ropey here, but the basics are right. And they help them over the line and then say, I'd like you to work on, involving the learner a bit more here. I'd like you to involve in, really making sure that you're matching what the learner needs, because it was good stuff, but it wasn't really what the learner needed. Yeah. However, your basics are right, so I've helped you over the line. So instead of finding 31, they'll just find 33. So if your basics are right, you will pass. So it doesn't worry me at all.
No. And I don't like the idea of, I've got to get 31, or I've got to get 33.
You've got to get 51.
Yeah.
Because that's what you start with.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
You lose points as a result of what you say or don't say, or do or don't do. So it's completely within your own control.
Yes, absolutely.
So people complain, how many industries do this? How many industries, how many teachers have total control over the process when it comes to Ofsted, because they don't start with full points at Ofsted. We start with 51 points. Yeah. So it's a pretty good place. It doesn't worry me at all.
No, good. We had one guy down here, his immediate reaction, more rubbish from the DVSA, that's going in the bin. Really?
They're just a pack of bastards and they hate me, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Not at all.
And will always say to somebody, have you ever met any of these people? Now, I was lucky enough to meet Loveday Ryder last year, and she's actually
Very
helped.
good, isn't she?
Oh, she is very positive. She's helping me try to break down the wall that I currently have with the DVSA press office, because I'm trying to do a podcast on Ask the Examiner. Immediately, as soon as I said it to her, she said, "Oh, great, I'll get Mark Wynne involved." I thought, "Oh, whoa, slow down. I wasn't expecting that." As a senior examiner.
The people at the top of this organisation are passionate and understand.
Yes.
Their hands are tied with government red tape.
Yes.
Anything they want to change has to be an act of parliament.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we're still trying to struggle to get Brexit through, so we won't discuss that. But that's standing in the way of any other changes.
Yes.
That's taking up parliamentary time. So
Yeah.
whether we get the change, but it's. I would beseech everybody, if you've not been to one of these instructor shows where the DVSA are there, just go and ask. And Loveday Ryder, for the first time ever, we've got somebody at the helm who just says, "Well, just ask me anything you want."
Yes.
And I'll just field those questions. That's never happened before.
I sent an email to a very apologetic one and said, "I'm sorry to involve you again." Within an hour, I got a reply from her. Yeah. So I've been in touch with him again. And John Sheridan, what a loss he is to the DVSA. Fantastic. He been so helpful to me, not so much personally, but on some rather tricky issues that we had with an instructor here, and the advice he was giving. And I miss him.
I've spoken to John as sort of head of the audit end of things at LDC. I've spoken to him on many occasions.
Yeah.
And he's always, if he hasn't had the answer, he's come back to me within 24 hours with it. He's just a genuinely good guy.
Yeah. And he's
passionate about it. And it's, they're great to be around these people.
Yeah. And he's always taken an interest. When my stepdaughter had a cancerous tumour removed from a kidney, or had a kidney removed, and she's out in Australia. Even after it had happened, months later, I spoke to him and he asked how she was,
it's not a front. He's a genuinely nice bloke.
Yeah.
And unbelievably knowledgeable. This idea that they just failed ADIs. No. That's you spend a bit of you don't have to spend long with a guy to realise he really, really knows his stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So anybody who slags off the DVSA, I say, have you ever met any of the senior people? Because I think if you did, you'd probably change your tune.
In fairness, they've got a lot wrong.
Yeah.
But they've got most of it right.
Yes, I think that our successes in 2022 was probably rather
slightly ill-judged.
I think it was Chris Benson who said, "Just change the title."
Absolutely. That would have done it.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll sort of start bringing things towards an end there because there's so much in there. I thought we'd just finish with getting a little bit more about Bob the person, because there's a couple of passions apart from the lovely Martina, bikes and brass bands.
I've played in brass bands. Oh my God, since 1965. I was sat in I play for the local village band now. And I was sat in the junior band. I like to help youngsters come along. Youngster there, Henry, you're a great kid. And I said, the conductor said something. I said, that reminds me of one of my first sessions at junior band. Well, you were in a junior band, he says. I went, yeah. When was that? 1965. And he looked at me like, you could see him thinking, did that date even exist? I said, that's probably before your dad was born. Actually, that's before my granddad was born. It's like, oh shit. So it was the local village band. A couple of my mates joined, so I joined. And I've had a fantastic career with band. I've played at the highest levels. Had a great amount of fun from it. I've been all over the place with banding. And I'd intended on retiring. And when we moved over here, secretly, I think it's because Martina didn't want me under her feet all the time. She said, they've got a band in the village. I'm not bothered. Why don't you just go and see? Why don't you just go and have a look? Just go and see. I thought, So two things that she's either got another bloke or she's bored of me being at home. I like to think it's the latter. Anyway, I went up there, and it's £3 a pint at the local club, and they're nice people, so I stayed.
Oh, that's it.
The biking thing, I started life as a motorbike mechanic back in the day,
Right.
and I've always had a passion for them. I love biking. I've been all over the world. We're busy planning a trip to America, a buddy and me.
Right.
We're I think what we're going to do is buy some motorbikes out there and then sell them before we come back.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because I can buy them ahead of time, because obviously Martina, being American, her family live over there.
Yeah.
I'm still there. So some more big bike trips planned this year. I've got the Isle of Man in August for the Manx GP. We're going to...
You're taking part?
No. Good grief, no. And in July we're off to Berlin for the BMW Motorrad Festival. It's the 100th anniversary. And in September we're going to Spain for the Moto Piston Rally, which is for bikes before 1980. I'll take my old BMW there. And in April we're going somewhere. I can't remember where that is. In May we're doing the west coast of Scotland, so lots of miles this year.
Yeah. Yes, because down here we've got quite a few bikers who they'll be interested in all of that. Yeah.
So I've currently got a BMW GS 1200. When I went to buy it, I was looking for something else. The guy said, "Have you ever thought of one of these?" I went, "Not really, no." He said, "Why not?" That's why they're an old man's bike. I'm not being funny, but take it for a ride. It's a great piece of kit. It's a Swiss Army knife of motorcycles. It'll do everything.
Yeah.
And I've got my 1976 BMW R75, which is the Baroness. Beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And then the third bike I've got in the stable is a Dnipro, which is a Ukrainian bike. I saw it on eBay one night and thought, "Oh, that looks interesting. That looks like quite a nice project." Few wheels had been had, so I bought it. And when it got to me, the engine was seized. So I went back to the eBay list, and it says quite clearly in really big letters, "Engine seized." I just didn't spot that. Anyway, it's running now, but getting parts from the Ukraine is currently somewhat difficult.
Yes, I can imagine that at the moment.
But you can get them. They're very resilient people, bless them. So that's the biking end of things and the brass bandy things.
Right. Okay. So just before we finish then, so it's basically the things that you're doing now are very much online with being better with Bob and that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you go to clientcenteredlearning.co.uk/being better with Bob, and there's a hyphen in between each of the words, that'll bring you up to that page. The first one is they're 2 hours on a Wednesday evening. The next ones are in
May, aren't they?
April, I think. Is it April? No, May. The first one is How We Learn, and it's looking at the way human beings learn, and it's not quite what people might think. And then the second one is all about scoring well in the real world and the exam, and it's all about adopting an approach which is the same for both.
Right. Well, I'm ever so glad that we finished with that, because we could have, if we'd started with that, we could have gone through all of that, and then people wouldn't have signed up for it. So now they've got to.
Oh yeah. So it's with my thoughts and ideas about the Part 3 and the standards check are what underpin these stuff. There's also my membership site, which is $29.95 a month, and you get access to everything that I do. And if people don't like it, they just cancel their membership, and that's it. That's There's no length of time. I always say, if people don't think it was worthwhile, just give me a shout and I'll give you your money back.
Now, it was at this point that my laptop battery decided to die on us, which I hadn't noticed. But it was quite a convenient place to stop, with Bob just finishing what he was saying. Unfortunately, I don't get the chance to actually thank him publicly on here, which I have done privately, obviously. But yeah, I think we've got a great recording here, and I hope there's a lot of really good, useful information that people can pick up. So just hope you all enjoy the show. Thank you very much.